about to say something controversial, perhaps revolutionary. Most BL love interests bore the hell out of me. So weirdly enough, it did take me until this year to realize that most BL love interests are one, the same, and two, boring as hell. And when I say BL love interest, I mean the character who is coded as the top, the husband, and the semi. My favorite words. And I promise that one day my video on gender norms in BL will come, but frankly that topic is so broad and there's so many things to say that I want to take my time with it. So today I'm sort of starting with one half of the issue, the top character. BL is extremely binary. It has a set of implicit rules that just have to happen. And it is extremely rare that they're not included. No matter the production or the screenwriters, gender norms are almost always present in BL. And even if they're not, BL audiences have been so used to them that we apply those rules and norms to the shows ourselves. We will always look at the more masculine, the taller, the bigger, the darker, and that has its own implications. And yes, I promise my video on colorism is coming very soon. But we will look at those kinds of characters as the tops, while the more feminine, smaller, shorter and lighter characters will be coded as the bottoms. This is the #1 implicit rule in BL that everyone has internalized, including me, who despises the need for BL to put their characters in tiny little boxes that they cannot escape. But why am I talking about this? Because the bottom character will almost always be the stand-in for the viewer, a predominantly female audience. The more feminine one, despite being in a gay series, is supposed to represent the average female viewer. And so we get many tropes for these characters. We have the shy ones, the grumpy ones, the soft ones, the needs to be tamed ones. And I'm not saying that bottom characters cannot also have very repetitive character traits, but I don't find them quite as boring as the characters we're gonna see today. In contrast of the bottom, who represents the viewer and is the actual main character of the show, we have his love interest, the top, who both the main character and the viewer will lust over. And the top character is often extremely conventionally attractive, very manly by all the standards, again tall, big, with lots of muscles. And for that I actually recommend the show Call It What You Want, which discussed the need for the top actors to stay extremely fit and often go through crazy diets.
ผมอยู่กับมันมา4 วันอ่ะมันก็อ้วกอย่างนี้ทุกวันอ่ะพี่ทำไมอ่ะคือบาสมันเป็นเมย์ใช่ป่ะมันก็ต้องหุ่นบึกเลยโดนบังคับให้กินแต่อกไก่ปั่นกับแตงกวาครับแล้วกินอย่างอื่นไม่ได้เลย
But it's not the physical appearance of these men I've got an issue with. For the record, they're all extremely attractive. But their personality, that I've got an issue with. And I need to talk about it today. I have to start with the worst example of today's video. Because yeah, we're gonna go from worst to best, if you will. But we gotta talk about Mork from Fish Up on the Sky. He is the reason most people who dislike the show dislike it. And that's because despite the fact that phana is a real cutie, Mork is probably the worst written BL love interests ever. And he's actually the character who awoke me to the trope of the 1 perfect, 2 boring, and 3 pushy BL love interest trope that we're gonna discuss today. Something that we will see a lot of today is a character that simply does not exist outside of the main character of the show that they are pursuing. Mork doesn't exist outside of P. We know nothing about him unless it advances the plot. We know he's well-liked, popular, pushy, close to Mungnan and Bam, he's Min's big brother, and he's in love with P. That's it. We know nothing of his personality, his aspirations. We only see him with Mungnan, his best friend, when the plot calls for it. And Mungnan literally disappears in the later half of the show when he's not needed anymore. The dude isn't even at Mork's birthday. What? Literally just realized that. What the fuck? Mork's friendship with Bam seems actually more solid, but again is just only plot related. And him being Min's brother literally appears twice for the sake of the plot, and there's absolutely no bond between them whatsoever, which does feel unsettling compared to P and Dehan, another set of brothers that were actually my favorite pairing from the show. I actually quite enjoyed Fish Upon the Sky. There are a lot of aspects of this show that I liked, and others I found a little more problematic. Mork being at the top of the list. Because Mork is not only one-dimensional, he's also extremely pushy. Guess the dumb bitch who accidentally deleted part of her video and now has to film it again! You already know who it is. And that's something we're gonna see a lot of today. As a lot of BL love interest only flaw is being pushy as hell. Not even because the writer intended it to be seen as a flaw, but because it's actually seen as a masculine quality that's supposed to make the love interest more desirable. The main character, once again a reminder, the bottom in most shows even when it's not explicitly said or shown, is supposed to be the little weak passive guy who waits for his big strong tall man to sweep him off his feet. And Mork is not only pushy, he completely disregards peace boundaries by ignoring his discomfort at being the center of attention, directly announcing to their whole university that's already scrutinizing them that he likes P, and participating in a life with the Mork P shippers that have made P's life miserable. Like, this man is a giant walking red flag. Like, not only does he pale in comparison to the other three main characters of the show who are so full of personality and quirky, but he's like not a good person too. In the same vein, we have Nubsib from Lovely Writer. And I know a lot of you are gonna tell me,
but Nubsib is flawed, he doesn't count as perfect.
But once again, he absolutely does, because once again, just like Mork, his only major flaw is being pushy and manipulative. And once again, those are not seen as flaws by the writers, but become flaws for the viewers because they're so badly written. Nubsib is tall, fit, hot, popular, talented, liked by everyone. He gets the main BL role despite having no interest in acting whatsoever. Like, does the guy encounter any obstacle on his way? And does he have any personality outside of being obsessed with Jin and wanting to get closer to him? The answer is no. And to his defense, Nubsib still has pretty cute moments. And I do believe that mostly comes from Kao's performance as him. But frankly, he completely pales in comparison to Jin, who is quirkier and cuter than him. But if Nubsib was just a bland love interest like all the others we're gonna see today, I wouldn't have as much of an issue. I would still complain, because that's literally my thing. But my biggest issue is that he is so manipulative and pushy, which we the audience are supposed to find hot, but I absolutely don't. Now we're down to just the plain, boring love interests, and we have Phana from 2 Moons. I have never seen 2 Moons 2, so I'm only talking about the original. But we can all agree that on top of the actor's performance being the weakest from the bunch, Phana as a character is just not interesting at all. Once again, we have that sort of perfect idea of the popular guy, tall, attractive, liked by everyone, talented at everything. And while we do see a more vulnerable side of Phana as the show progresses, which was a bit cute to witness, let's be honest, he doesn't have much flavor at all. Then we have Dean from Until We Meet Again. And if you follow my channel, you know that my most unpopular opinion, apparently ever, is that Until We Meet Again isn't that great of a show. And it's mostly because Dean, its main character, kinda sucks. Do I need to repeat his main characteristics? Tall, attractive, popular, good at everything, confident, flawless, and pushy. Dean is the blandest character of all time. I didn't love Parm as a main character either, but at least he had some good moments. Dean might as well have been a wall and I wouldn't have seen the difference. I think what kinda makes it worse is that he's the reincarnation of Korn, who has a lot of the same qualities yet is a way better character than Dean will ever be. Then we have Solo from Oxygen the series. We can agree that most characters in that show are boring as hell, but I want to talk about Solo because firstly this video is about the BL love interests, but more importantly because the show attempted to give him some personality through the adventures he lived because of his father. But that's not how it works. You have to give your character a good personality and an interesting story. Not one or the two or none. But frankly, this show was so forgettable, I don't think Solo was its worst aspect at all. In fact, I did appreciate the acting of his actors in some scenes. Leo from Don't Say No. So I did watch Don't Say No because I was bored and had nothing to watch, and yeah. Frankly, this show was a lot less problematic than I thought it would be seeing the series it comes from. But honestly, I could do a full video on it because it highlighted a lot of my problems with BL. As I put it, it's mediocrity covered in sex scenes to satisfy the fetishizers. And like Leo is not an awful character. He just fits perfectly in this video because again he is tall, attractive, very manly, extremely devoted to his man, has the perfect supportive family, is rich, popular, everyone wants him. Like this guy has zero flaws except that in this special episode he didn't admit his feelings for Fiat. But frankly, if you see a guy having seemingly no interest in you, why would you confess? Anyways, I don't hate him, but that character brings me no joy whatsoever. Like all of the other characters in this video, he's just there so the viewer can lust over him. Which I get, but give your love interest some personality, I swear to God. Kongpob from Sotus. I know I always talk about Sotus being my first Thai drama ever, and therefore being really special to me despite its flaws. But I have to admit I don't really like Kongpob as a character. Like, I've never really understood why he was one of the most beloved BL characters ever, when frankly the dude has no personality whatsoever. His only character trait is being perfect and also standing up for what's right, which is a desirable quality. And like, once again, in contrast with Atit, who is a way more interesting and complex character, it is hard for me to really care about him. Once again, the most endearing moments for Kongpob are plot-based and not personality-based. But I know that at least he's not problematic, so that's something, I guess. It is to be noted that Kongpob is the only character on this list that's actually the main character, and Atit is the love interest. Then we have bbomb from Nitiman, who's extremely similar to Kongpob in the way that I don't mind him as a character, but he's just boring. Once again, he's popular, the hottest guy in university allegedly, has a really bland personality, and is a bit pushy. And like, Nitiman as a whole is still a pretty bland show, even though I still kinda enjoyed it somehow. So it's not really surprising. But once again, bbomb has no personality whatsoever outside of being obsessed with his boyfriend, which is really a pattern we've seen today. There's also the love interest in End of Love tossara, which was so forgettable I legit don't remember the character's name. But I had to mention him because again, he has no personality outside of wanting to be the main character's boyfriend. He is pushy and is considered as perfect by all of the other characters on the show. So he joins the boring group for me. Once again, I forgot his name, but even if I remembered it, I would butcher it, so it's actually good news. But we have the love interest in We Best Love. Once again, man's freaking hot, but man's freaking boring. He's got all the same things as others. He's popular, good looking, obsessed with the main character, and has no personality. Which is sad because again, it was contrasted by the main character who was a lot funnier and quirkier than him. So it really reflects worse on him. Then I want to talk about Sarawat from Together, because I feel like he fits the bill entirely for a perfect and boring main character. He's hot, popular, has literal fangirls in university, he's talented, effortlessly cool, and yes, pushy. Yet, I can't fully bring myself to say that he's boring. Like, is he the most interesting character I've ever come across? No. But I do think the director and the screenwriters did a really good job at making Sarawat more than the cliché classic BL love interest. Firstly, Sarawat is broody and sort of cold, which does differentiate him from the other characters in this list. And there's also this part of hidden feelings he has for Tyne that humanizes him. And I do think that the direction and acting really made him a more sympathetic character overall. Which is why for me he toggles the line between a good character and a boring one. Another character that technically fits the description but I actually love a whole lot is Kurosawa from Cherry Magic. He is described by Adachi, the main character, as succeeding in everything. He's attractive, popular, highly competent, and highly sought after. And yeah, he fits the bill of the perfect love interest that we've seen over and over today. That being said, Kurosawa is firstly the opposite of pushy. In fact, he takes Adachi in consideration for everything and puts him first every goddamn time, which is a definite change. But also, while he could be boring, Kurosawa is written to be perfect because he's actually not. And that's what the show unravels little by little. The moment that Kurosawa fell for Adachi is actually one of his lowest moments, where contrarily to his image of perfection, he felt grossly inadequate and like a huge failure. There are many moments where his vulnerability shines through. Is he the quirkiest character ever? No, and he's still pretty perfect as a character. But perfect doesn't necessarily equal boring. and Kurosawa is a great example of that. A character with a very similar storyline is Dawn from Light on Me, who once again appears perfect on the surface, but is actually a flawed human being who is under a lot of pressure. While Light on Me is a romance, I actually enjoy the show more for its characters and the way they're written. And it was definitely great to see Dawn come out of his perfect shell and finally start to figure out who he is. I think he was a really important character to challenge this idea of perfection in a BL love interest. What about their boyfriends? And now I want to explore another option. If there is a type of BL love interest, the tops that are all very similar, is there a type of BL main characters, the bottoms, that are also very similar? And yeah, a lot of BL main characters are quite similar. A bit shy, passive and quirky. Like Pete from Love by Chance, Parm from Until We Meet Again, Adachi from Cherry Magic, Matt from He's Coming to Me, Tyne from Together, Wayo from Two Moons, P from Fish Upon the Sky, Jin from Nitiman, Jin from Lovely Writer, and I could continue on and on. There's also the tsundere archetype that's often found in the feminine character in a romance. But even then, though those characters have similar characteristics, they still are quite different, because their whole personality is not being the hot love interest that only lives for the main character. They have goals outside of their romance and are interesting characters on their own, whereas the boring BL love interest is more of an idea than a character itself. It's the idea for a character to be extremely desirable by his looks and personality, and who's more of a fantasy than a real person. The boring BL love interest is there to satisfy the imagination of the primarily female audience who can aspire to have a perfect man like him. And lastly, is this boring, overtly masculine love interest only found in BL? And the answer is, of course not. This pushy and cliché aspect of masculinity is present in every media, even outside of Thailand in general. But I must admit that while I found a few male leads in straight romances that fit this category, it seems to be a way less common trope than BL. I can name you many male leads that are pushy and don't respect boundaries. That's sadly the main character trait of most male leads, but it's rarely paired in this group of pushy, perfect, conventionally attractive, popular, good at everything characteristics. There's a lot of pushy characters, but rarely is it pushy, perfect, and boring. And frankly, I can't really think of an explanation for it. Because while women do lust after these top characters in BL, I know that we personally tend to prefer more complex characters. So I'm not really sure if the BL screenwriters are really hitting their target audience in the way they think they are. Tell me what you think about it, but for me it's very clear that the audience's favorite character is almost always the main bottom character. To conclude, let's try to innovate a little bit, please. Let's not give out all of the personality to only one half of the ship, you know? I'm just kinda tired of pretending to care about a BL love interest just because he's hot. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, I'll see you next time, and have a great day.